Lucas Mitchell took great pride in his home. At 36, he worked long hours as a mechanic, but always made time on weekends to tend to his yard. His modest but well-maintained house, with neatly trimmed bushes and a vibrant flower bed, stood as a testament to his dedication. Recently, Lucas decided to upgrade his lawn care routine. After weeks of research, he finally invested in a state-of-the-art riding mower from a well-known hardware store. It was a pricey purchase, but he saw it as a smart investment. It would save time and effort in the long run. The morning he put the mower together, he felt a rush of excitement, much like a child unboxing a long-awaited gift. He carefully read through the manual, filled the tank with gas, and even wiped the machine down for a pristine look. When he finally settled onto the seat and gripped the controls, a satisfied grin spread across his face. This is going to be a game changer, he thought. But Lucas had no idea that his peaceful Saturday afternoon was about to take a turn for the worse. Just as he fired up the mower and began making his way across the yard, his neighbor, Margaret Dawson, made her dramatic entrance. Margaret, a woman in her mid-50s, was infamous in the neighborhood for stirring up unnecessary drama. She had a habit of dressing in overly flashy outfits and had an exaggerated sense of self-importance. If something minor could be blown out of proportion, she would make sure it was. The second the hum of Lucas's mower filled the air, Margaret's front door flew open. She marched outside, her wedged sandals sinking into the grass as she stomped toward him. Lucas barely had time to react before she stepped directly in his path, forcing him to slam on the brakes. "What do you think you're doing?" she shrieked, hands on her hips, her face a mask of irritation. Lucas removed his ear protection, his brows knitting together. "Mowing my lawn," he replied, confused. Margaret huffed, waving her arms dramatically. "Do you have any idea how loud that thing is? It's shaking my entire house. I have a splitting headache because of you." Lucas took a steady breath, trying to keep his patience intact. "It's midday, Margaret. It's a perfectly normal time for yard work. I'm not breaking any noise laws." Margaret scoffed. "Oh, don't act like you're innocent. You're doing this on purpose, to annoy me." Her voice climbed higher with each word. "If you don't turn that thing off right now, I'm calling the police." Lucas blinked. "You're going to call the cops because I'm mowing my lawn?" Margaret didn't respond. She was already dialing. "Yes, officer, I need to report a disturbance," she said, her voice dripping with exaggerated distress. "A man is outside using an unbelievably loud machine. He's being aggressive, and I feel threatened." Lucas clenched his jaw. Unbelievable. He knew exactly what she was doing, and it infuriated him. But he refused to stoop to her level. Minutes later, a police cruiser pulled up. Two officers stepped out, their expressions neutral as they approached. Margaret immediately launched into her dramatic act, clutching her chest as if she were on the verge of collapse. "Thank goodness you're here. This man is harassing me with that monstrosity of a machine. He refuses to stop, even though I asked nicely." One of the officers turned to Lucas. "Sir, can you explain what's going on?" Lucas gestured toward his yard. "Just mowing my grass, officer. Brand new mower, just getting the hang of it." The officers exchanged a glance. One stepped over to examine the machine before nodding. "This is a standard riding mower," he said. "Nothing excessive about the noise level. And it's well within legal hours." Margaret's face twisted in frustration. But he's making my life miserable. Isn't there anything you can do?" The second officer sighed. "Ma'am, unless he's violating a curfew, there's no law against mowing a lawn. If the sound bothers you, I suggest closing your windows." Margaret's jaw tightened. She clearly hadn't expected the officers to dismiss her complaints so easily. Turning to Lucas, one of the officers nodded. "You're fine to continue, sir. Just try to wrap it up soon." "Will do," Lucas replied with a polite nod. As the patrol car pulled away, Margaret turned on him, her expression venomous. "You think you're clever, don't you?" she hissed. "People like you. You always act like you're better than everyone else. But you'll regret this. I promise you that." Lucas stiffened. The underlying hostility in her words wasn't lost on him. But instead of giving her the reaction she wanted, he restarted the mower and continued his work. That night, as he sat at his kitchen table, The encounter replayed in his mind. Margaret's threat lingered, gnawing at him. Something told him she wasn't finished. Deciding to take a proactive approach, Lucas did some digging online. Within minutes, he uncovered something shocking. Margaret had a very questionable past. Public records revealed she had been involved in multiple fraud cases, and more disturbingly, she had been dismissed from her previous teaching job under suspicious circumstances. Lucas printed out the documents, feeling a newfound sense of preparedness. If she ever tried another stunt, he would be ready. Sure enough, a few days later, Margaret attempted to file a false harassment complaint against him. But when the officers arrived, Lucas calmly handed over the information he had gathered. Margaret's smug expression faltered as the officers skimmed through the papers. "Ma'am," one of them said, "considering your history, you might want to rethink making baseless accusations." Margaret turned pale, realizing she had overplayed her hand. With nothing left to say, she stomped back inside. But Lucas wasn't done. Over the following days, he spoke with other neighbors, collecting their stories about Margaret's years of hostility. Turns out everyone had a story about her false accusations, petty complaints, and outright bullying. Lucas compiled the information and presented it to the local HOA. A petition was drawn up, demanding action against her repeated misconduct. The support was overwhelming. Nearly every resident signed it. When the HOA finally confronted Margaret with the evidence, she tried to play the victim, claiming she was being unfairly targeted. But the overwhelming proof against her spoke louder than her words. Margaret was issued a hefty fine and placed on probation. Any further complaints against her would result in legal action. Furious and humiliated, she lashed out one last time as she stormed out of the HOA meeting. "You'll regret this," she spat at Lucas. "I swear you will?" Lucas only smiled. "We'll see about that." A few months later, after yet another complaint, this time for threatening a delivery driver, Margaret received an eviction notice. On a crisp autumn morning, Lucas watched from his porch as a moving truck pulled up to her house. Margaret packed up and left, shooting venomous glares at anyone who dared look her way. Mrs. Connors, an elderly woman from down the street, walked over to Lucas with a plate of cookies. "It's finally over," she said with a smile. Lucas nodded, watching Margaret's car disappear down the road. "Yeah," he said, exhaling deeply. "It is." And with that, peace returned to the neighborhood. And Lucas? He mowed his lawn every weekend, without interruption. With Margaret gone, the neighborhood felt lighter, like a dark cloud had finally lifted. Conversations flourished, kids played freely, and laughter replaced tension. Lucas relished the newfound peace, knowing he had stood his ground without stooping to her level. As he steered his mower across the lawn that weekend, he took a deep breath, enjoying the crisp air and the hum of the machine, this time uninterrupted. Justice had prevailed, not through anger, but through patience and truth. He glanced around, nodding to his neighbors with a satisfied grin. Life was good again, and for the first time in years, truly peaceful.